Okay, so the class today is on gardening with wildlife, basically. And here we've got deer, heavy. We've got javelina, wild pigs, gophers, pack rats, porcupines. I just shot a Facebook and Instagram post on porcupine damage, which is very unusual. I was down in Watson Woods and I went, oh, perfect example. Oh, everyone wants, no one believes there's porcupines. I didn't see the porcupine, but I did see the damage, and we caught that on film and shot it out in 90 seconds or less. Did you? Porcupines? It's very unusual. Oh, really? What time of day did you see the porcupine?
It was surprising. It was like probably 2.
Really? Is it cloudy or something? That's so unusual.
It was behind a bush.
Huh.
And we saw it, and people kept saying, what's that? I said, no, don't touch it, it's a porcupine.
Yeah, porcupines are here, and the damage they do is they'll take the bark, they'll start peeling the bark off. They eat bark. That's their main thing. And they live for fruit trees. Apples and pears and cherries and apricots and nectarines. This one happened to be an elm. So wild elm. They'd taken the bark, the first crotch, they'd crawled up the tree, sat there in this major limb and just sat there all night and just peeled off the bark. Just ate the bark. And they'd come back every night and do the same thing until the tree is girdled and there's no bark left. So that limb will die. Then they'll come back and they'll start at the next limb. And they'll start at the next. And they can kill a tree if you let it go. So there's ways to protect that. But keep an eye on it. I doubt if you'll see it. The odds are against it. But it's regular. We have customers coming in at least a couple times a month going, I don't understand. My bark is starting to disappear. What's going on? It's porcupines. There's only one thing that does that, porcupines. So this class is on how to garden with the wildlife. Let me just put the disclaimer, and then I'll share with you what the format's going to be today. There's no way to truly keep wildlife out of your garden unless you fence them out. That's the only way. So I'm going to give you some techniques. I'm going to show you some plants that are good. But even last night, the javelina were in my test gardens, and they were digging around. They didn't eat the plants. They didn't bother. They just moved them aside and went, I'm not interested. I'm looking for grubs and worms and protein sources in the ground. That's what they were after. Maybe some roots, but they're rototilling the ground to look for grubs. Their number one thing, worms. That's their protein source. Otherwise, they eat prickly pears and all kinds of crazy stuff. So the only way to truly keep that out is to fence them. Okay? Some animals you can fence out, some you cannot. Porcupines, maybe you can fence out, probably. Raccoons, you cannot. They just have a way of getting over and into things. Pack rats, which is this cat-sized rat. It's like a rat on steroids. It's bigger than a regular rat. Great big beady eyes, real long tail. They can get into anything, anywhere, anytime. And they're active right now. I'm going to show you how to deal with those. Gophers, they are highly active right now. So they're moving around. Mom just kicked them out and said, this is my space for winter. You guys go find your own place. And so you're seeing this movement in the garden where there's more mounds than usual out in the gardens. You need to keep up on this until we get cold, and then all of a sudden that activity will stop. But if left unchecked, they will destroy the garden over the winter. So you really want to get on that. So we'll share with you how to do that. Deer, we don't have elk per se. Elk are mainly down in Skull Valley. Any from Kirkland, Skull Valley? Okay, that's where you're dealing with elk and stuff. That's our closest herd. There's rumors up on the backside of Copper Basin of elk starting to show up, but we'll see. Mainly that's Williams, Flagstaff, the next elevation up. But where there's ranch land and horses, that's where, basically, elk are just big cows with longer legs, can jump over any fence, any size, any height, and they come in, they destroy. I've literally seen a bull elk in rut take a 25-foot Arizona cypress. By the time he got done showing off for the gals, he had leveled this tree down to about this high. And he's going, come on, I want some more, let's go! So they're really dangerous when they're in rut showing off. They can be dangerous, and they destroy the gardens. So we won't cover that one so much. Deer we will. So up here what I would like to do is show off some of the hardware, because it's the boring stuff. Get the basics out of the way, show off a couple flowers. And then I thought we'd take a walking tour. It's a small enough group. We can show off some of the plants that are kind of bulletproof. You can just go for it. You plant it right out there. And we never use the word proof. We always use the word resistive. So if there's anything else in the neighborhood, they would rather eat that than this thing. But if they're desperate, I think they'll eat poison ivy. I mean, it's crazy what they'll eat sometimes. And I think it depends on what their natural habitat has. If they've got their favorites, they'd rather eat that. But sometimes early in spring, late winter, they're more desperate. They eat more things than they usually do. Then once their natural grass or things come up, they migrate off of that and they go over to their things. They have favorite foods just like people. So I want to go over the hardware here, then we'll take a walking tour, and then I'll take you across the street to the test gardens where you actually see live demonstration. This is where we go put things to see, let's see if the animals will eat this. Let's see how much sun this particular thing will take. Let's see how much shade a sun plant will take. We're actually experimenting with plants to see so we can give confident advice to you. So we go, yeah, this will work for you. It's going to be great because we've got proof. So we'll share those test gardens. All in all, about an hour and 15 is probably where we're together, and then I'll hang out and take questions. Sound like a good format? Okay. So let me go over two things that are just immediate that I think are so important that are not related to the topic, but I think you should really put it on your radar and consider doing this. Some of you I know have already taken care of this. One, fertilize everything in the landscape in the next month. I would say by Halloween. Super important. Can't emphasize it enough. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's off topic, but this is the most important feeding of the entire year right now, October. Most important feeding. This is a food we put together ourselves. It's a recipe we have for here, for the mountains of Arizona, because we're unique here. It's all natural, so we're not throwing a bunch of chemicals in the yard. It's safer for pets, birds, all that kind of stuff, and it's slow release. And so over the winter, it'll release a little food, so you'll get better bud growth on your flowering things. Let's say lilacs, forsythia, quince, fruit trees. You'll get better flower growth, which means better fruits and flowers, fragrance next spring. You do that, and it will keep your evergreens green. We have a thing called winter chlorosis here, where the evergreens they turn yellow, they get pale because of the shortness of the day, and just if you fertilize them, they stay green. If you do it the next month or so. So I'd say at the very latest by Thanksgiving, but I would prefer to do it before Halloween. Okay, October's the best. Okay, if you've had trouble with things blooming in your yard, let's say your lilac didn't have the quantity of flowers last spring that all your neighbors did. For my stubborn things, this fall I'll also put on superphosphate. This is 0-18-0. It is all phosphorus. So that's the middle number is what causes roots and blooms. So if you want more blooms, more fragrance, roses, lilacs, things that were stubborn, feed them some of this. It's kind of like a Snickers bar for fruiting plants, for flowering plants. So they take it in and go, oh, that's so good. It's not truly a food. You need the more balanced stuff here. So you use those at the same time. But things that bloom, this will make them bloom better. I mean, really make them show off. Okay. With that, I think one other. Grasshoppers. There's another hatching of grasshoppers. They're really, really aggressive right now. I mean, they're congregating. I just went around the nursery and I baited certain areas. They were in the weeds. They were about the grasses. They were about this tall. You'd walk through it and the grass would come alive. If you can put no-low bait on those areas where the grasshoppers are active, it will affect not only this generation, but it will also affect next spring's generation. This is a virus that they eat, and then it kills them. They stop eating right away, so they don't die immediately. It's a starvation thing. It's very pleasant to watch. They just stop eating. And then any eggs that they lay, it affects those eggs with the same virus. So you can, by applying it now, it will affect this generation and the next couple crops, next couple hatchings that happen. We typically have 2 to 3 waves of grasshoppers that hit us. So they're hatching at different times of the year. This you can affect them, and it only affects grasshoppers and crickets. So I just helped a customer, big property out in Prescott Valley. They have chickens. They were worried about their chickens. It does not affect birds, pets. It only goes after, that virus only goes after grasshoppers and crickets. That's it. So again, just something that's so important, it's so timely. And it's so, you can do it now, and it'll make such a great difference in the gardens next year. Those are the two things that were off topic. Now we're back on to topic. So we just reiterate. The only way to keep a javelina out of your yard truly is by standing in your front yard with a stick and poking them as they come in, or by fencing them off. That's the only way. If you are on a major route, there are some ancient trails where deer have gone for hundreds of years. You can see the trails in the forest. Now they put your house right there in the middle of the trail. If you've got that, that's a real challenge. So it's hard to derail nature. You can do it, but it's usually by a physical barrier. For myself, what I do, the backyard is fenced because we have dogs. And so we want to keep them in a space that's safe, for they can just roam around, call their own. The front yard, I'm in a neighborhood. The HOA says no fences. So there, I went out in the middle of the night and I secretly hammered some pieces of rebar in about 24 inches down. And then I ran one wire through the gardens and I electrified it. So I have an electric fence going through the front yard because I am in Javelina Central. It's up just above the high school, Prescott Heights area, Eagle Ridge at Prescott Lakes. That's the thick of Javelina. And so they use the dry washes as highways, basically, to come up, and they'll pop up every once in a while. I go, I wonder what's up here. Where's Ken's Gardens? They single me out because I have a nice garden. I mean, it looks good. And they'll rototill everything. So I put one wire. I did not enclose it throughout the entire yard. I simply ran electric wire, 12 volts, through the garden. I can't surround the front yard because there's a driveway, there's the front door, and I don't want you coming and getting zipped. Or my wife, more importantly, if my wife goes out and Vincent gets zipped, ooh, that's going to be bad. So I have it on a timer, and it comes on about 10 o'clock at night. It goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's when Lisa gets up. And so I've got it timed to where it's not active during the day, only when the javelina are busy looking to destroy my gardens. And once they get hit, that first night, I hung a piece of tinfoil over the wire and I baited it with some peanut butter, which is irresistible to javelina. They love peanut butter. So the lead boar went in and they zipped it going, oh, peanut butter, grabbed onto it, got a 12 volt. It's like sticking your tongue to a 9 volt battery. It's the same effect. They went berserk, and the entire herd must have rushed forward because there was wire hanging. I mean, it was all over the yard. None of it was on the insulators at all. It was all over the yards. They must have gone crazy. And so I reset it back up, put it back on the insulators, set it up on the yard, and they haven't been back since. So, and not only that, but it created a halo effect. So they're so terrified of my yard now that they don't go to my neighbor's yard either. I said, pay to be my neighbor. Pretty yards, and no javelina. So the rats can come in still, they can get through that. The rabbits can get in. They're not too bad. I don't mind them eating a little bit. I can share. It's when they come in droves and they invite their friends. It's like a Super Bowl party in my backyard. I don't want that. So a few are okay, they're cute. Then there's a line in the sand where it goes, okay, that is enough. All of you go away. So I kind of have that approach to things. Okay, so you need a barrier. Deer can jump almost anything. They can clear a 10-foot fence. But generally, there's no health insurance policy with wildlife. So if they break a leg, it's over just like that. There's no recovery. And they know that. And so they'll generally not want to clear over about a 6 foot. They generally will leave that alone. If you go 4 foot, it's almost like it's nothing. I almost step over it. But at 6 foot, I've used that to keep deer specifically and elk out of the gardens, and they'll stay away unless they're absolutely desperate. Then they might, or absolutely stupid. The youngsters, young bucks, they might try it because they just don't know any better. But generally speaking, that works. Commercially, what we did, we'd grow fruit trees in Skull Valley. It's the thick of everything, right on Kirkland Creek. It was in the middle of all the wildlife. There we protected the crops. We were selling fruit trees. They're eating my livelihood when they come in and they're not just nibbling a tree you planted in your yard. It's my college education for the kids. It's that. There we ran a 4 foot high electric fence around that field, but deer can clear that very easily. but they can't. They can go up almost any distance. They can't go out. So there we ran. It was 4 foot high by 4 foot wide, double strand of electric fence, and they wouldn't clear that. That was the solution. That this is just trial and error. This is just, I'm just giving you some things that have worked for us, especially for you all that have larger properties. This is going to really play out for you. So 4 foot wide around, that really, really worked. If you're in horse property, which all of us are, these with horses, if you don't electrify the barn, they'll eat everything. They nibble nervously on everything. So you tend to put electricity around the barn gates and that kind of stuff. Well, these doggone deer, they know that when you see a yellow insulator, you're going to get zipped on the nose. They've been trained to. So when we planted a new fruit tree out in the orchard, we would put 4 foot fence, field fence, wrap it around about 4 foot away from the trunk. We put dummy insulators on each of those tops. We would never put wire on it. We just knew they were trained. They knew when you see that yellow insulator, ooh, I don't want to lean over and try to nibble that new peach tree or that new apple or that new pear. I'll get zipped. I don't like that. So I'll just stay away and I'll go eat the other stuff. The secret is to either repel or scare or shoo the animals into your neighbor's yard, not your yard. And you need to do it long enough to where they just forget that you're there. You need to derail their natural instinct so they always go to your neighbors, not to you. And it'll take a rhythm. It'll take a little bit of time to do that. But once you get them trained, it's just like training a dog. You need to train them to go eat their apple trees, not your apple trees. Go strip the bark off the neighbor's aspens, not your aspens. That's the kind of what you want to go after. Okay, repellents. Let's go over that. There are a couple repellents. This is the best one we found. We've been playing with repellents for a lot of years. There's 2 down on the shelf. My wife allows me to use this one. I think it's the better one. This is by Bonide. It's called Repels All. It comes in granular form, and you sprinkle it on the ground. They get it on their feet, and they go, and then they preen themselves. And they go, oh, my wife won't let me in the door anymore. I smell so bad. I'm not allowed to. I just smell awful, and they keep preening, they keep getting on themselves, it almost gets worse. So you irritate them until they don't come in this part of the yard. Okay, that's how this particular product works. It is organic, it's safe for your dogs, it's safe for your cats, it's just safe for birds, but it has a rotten egg smell and garlic. Basically those 2 things, it's got a taste and an odor that they don't care for. Right now, I would suggest they make this in a liquid form. Right now, they're eating foliage. I would get the liquid form. That's going to be more effective. Spritz the new foliage that they seem to be eating, and then they'll bite on that foliage and go, ugh, that is nasty. What did they do to this plant? This yard tastes bad. That yard doesn't. Go eat from that yard. That's what you're trying to train them to do. Really critical for folks that know they're in the middle of the forest. When you're planting something new, just automatically spray it right away. Don't wait to see if. Because deer, the way their stomach works, they'll eat half the plant before they realize, oh yeah, I don't like this. I forgot about that. And then they move on. And they'll test it. They're the most curious. These creatures, they understand when something new is in the yard. They're watching. And they'll come just out of curiosity and see javelina come in, just dig things up, just to see what you were doing underneath the ground. They have no interest in the plant. They have interest in you planting something new in the yard. It's almost like a toy. It's like a game. They're playing mind games with us. We as gardeners must win. So that's repellents. Now, the repellents will last about 3 months or so. Then you'll reapply. It says longer, but I find it seems to be a little shorter. Dry climate or something kind of responds, I think affects it.
And it can go through the rain?
It can go through the rain. Yep, keeps it active. Gravel, I'm not as sure, but that's not an area where you have as many issues. They might dig it up a little bit, but not generally. They're going to be out where the mulchy, gardening spaces are. That's mainly where you're going to use these, the granular specifically. Right now, snakes are actively moving. They're going from where they've been hunting taking out rats and mice and that kind of stuff. So you may see some rattlesnakes. This is when you really see them. Middle of spring and fall, right now, through whenever that first hard freeze is. That's when you'll see, and they're migrating. They'll move 2-3 miles from where they normally spend their winters, and they'll group up. They're very social. Snakes are social. Does that even make sense? Basically, they like to stay in a hole in the ground together.
Oh, lawyers go together.
So they'll all winter here, they hibernate. They'll come out in the spring, and then they go out in different directions. So you see a snake that you see, let's say, parks out in your lawn or in a driveway, they're in a sunny spot. They'll be there only for a moment. You leave them alone, they'll naturally go away themselves. Just within 4 or 5 hours, they're just tired. So they're cold, and so they'll stay there, warm up, and then they're off again to wherever they're going to winter, hibernate for the winter. You can keep snakes out with snake stopper. This is a barrier that they absolutely don't like. It's made from herbs, where their tongues, when they come out getting directions, that herb will affect their tongue, and you'll literally see the snake come where this barrier is and turn and go the other way. But you need to put this out. Let's say you've got a garden space. There's some areas that are kind of freaky weird, like it's so thick you're going, I don't know if I want to go in there. Put snake stopper around that, and the snakes won't be in there. So put it at the fence lines. Put it at, you're really putting this in a band that keeps the snakes from migrating through into your gardens. Also, watch your garage. That seems to be a favorite space, especially for the old guys. They're just old and tired. They're usually big, and they're just lazy. They just they can't travel 3-4 miles again. They're just going, oh, behind the refrigerator in the garage, that's good enough. And so they'll tend to camp out. Watch that. That's something that's unique to the Southwest. And I think it's the older ones seem to, or maybe it's the young ones, I don't know. There's certain ones, you'll hear that story pretty often. They came in the garage and they're going to winter over in your garage. I don't know what they're thinking, but I think they're just tired. Should we cover the hard topics? Gophers. Gophers are an underground rat. Rats deserve to die. Whether they're above ground or below ground, we don't like rats, okay? Rats eat they strip the RV wires. We had to rewire my grandmother's house. The rats got up in the attic, started stripping the wires in the attic. So don't leave them unchecked. They will destroy hot tubs. They will fill up that built-in grill. They're very, very curious. They're very mischievous, and they're perfectly comfortable at home with you. These big piles of debris you see in the oaks as you travel out in the wild, those are pack rat nests. Okay. Underneath all those sticks, you'll find a little tiny bird nest. It looks like a bird nest. Shredded bark, very fine, very soft, very pretty. You'll find 2 to 3 of those nests underneath that debris pile. They're using it as defense and as shelter. So you never get just one rat, you get a whole family, sometimes whole colonies. Gophers work exactly the same way, only without the nest. They don't travel in pairs. It's a myth. There's only one of them. I've never seen one. A 50-foot fence line, I caught over 100 gophers on one fence line. They were using it as protection against hawks and things that naturally are predators. That they were using that as protection. They come out, take a look, without being wiped out by a red-tailed hawk or something. Okay, so there were a bunch of them. So just one gopher, you never have just one. And I've literally caught thousands, literally thousands. And I've killed more than that. So I've had up to 12 traps going. I'll give you my bent. I am very opinionated. I have a thought process on this. I can tell you that the bombs don't work. Don't waste your time, money, energy, or thought. These are just flares. You light, throw them down the hole, and it's supposed to asphyxiate them. Maybe it would work if there was one gopher mound that just showed up in your broccoli patch. Maybe it would work. But I think if a room in your house smells bad, what do? You close the door. I think they just block the tunnel and go, that's no good. And so I find that it's not very effective. So don't use this, okay? I sell them, but don't use them. To my friends and family, I won't sell this to you. Then you've got traps. Traps are good. You are dealing with a carcass, and about 25% of the time, it's not dead yet. It's still squirming around. So you need a shovel or a weeder is what I would use. Dandelion weeders, greatest tool ever. Break their neck. So there is some, you gotta have some guts to deal with traps. You may, if you're really good, you may get 50% of the time you'll have a gopher in a trap. The secret with traps, you have to get into the main run, and then it takes 2 traps. You have to set one this way and one this way, so no matter which way they're running down that main run, you'll get them. I've had up to 12 traps going. I would set it twice a day. I would capture about 12 gophers a day. I did that for a month. And finally I said, oh my gosh, this is not fun. This is work. This is true work. I got them off of about 2 acres. And finally I moved to baits. Gopher bait. This is zinc based. So there's no secondary kill. So if a cat or a dog or a coyote or something goes in and eats that dead gopher, dead mouse or dead thing, it won't keep killing. It only kills the thing that eats the bait itself. There's no secondary kill. Does that make sense? So it's much safer than strychnine and some of your other very toxic type of baits. I've been playing with a lot of baits. This is the one and only we'll sell because it actually works. A lot of the zincs, they seem to vaporize off or something happens. So this is Gopher Getter Type 2 bait. It's a terrible label. It's from a company I don't care for. They're so arrogant. But it works. So it works better than any other product, and I've tested them all. So this is a seed, basically, they've dipped and soaked in zinc. They're very attractive to seed. I started out with a teaspoon. I would open up the hole, get it down as far as I could, dump a teaspoon. It was a lot of work. What I finally moved to, if you have any kind of acreage at all, ½ acre or plus, they make a tool down there called a Gopher Probe. Oh, thank you, Ken. I meant to bring my working one from home, so just forgot. Perfect, thank you. This is a Gopher Probe. This is the way to go. You put the bait inside this hopper, so this top opens up, you pour it in, and then where that mound is, it's called a pocket gopher, because they have a pocket underneath their cheek. They fill it up with dirt, they haul it, and then they dump it out this hole. So you'll see, that's why they call it a pocket gopher. We don't have moles here, like in the Midwest and East. We just have pocket gophers. We have voles, or mice, and we have prairie dogs up in the upper, let's say Williams, that area. Not really here Prescott proper, but those are kind of our critters that we deal with. Underground, it's mainly going to be a gopher, pocket gopher. So where that mound is, poke this around the mound, and eventually you'll feel it slip. You just go, oh, it's not hard. Just all of a sudden it'll just slip. You know you're inside the tunnel when you have that. And then you open this rod up, and it swivels, and it opens up a trap door in the bottom, where it releases the bait underneath the mound, right in the mound where they can get to it. You'll get a much better takedown that way, much better kill rate. Let's just face it, you want them dead. So anyway, that's kind of where I went. What they do is they'll eat some of the seed, they get sick. What do you do when you get sick? You put yourself to bed. So in their runs, it's about a 10 foot by 10 foot tunnel network that they deal with. They'll have 3 or 4 nests down in there. They simply go to bed, and I've never once seen a dead gopher, not once. They always put themselves to bed and don't wake up. It's very gratifying. Okay? That's how you deal with gophers. Question on gophers. So you got traps. If you like work and you truly want to keep it organic, go with traps. It is work. You are going to have some live things. Also, I found the coyotes and the barn cats. Make sure that you weight it down. I used to strap my traps onto a 2x4 or 2x6 about this long, and I would paint the 2x4 or 2x6 red or orange, something bright, because often I would find the trap. It did trap something, the coyotes or the barn cats would get it. I found them up in the second story of the barn. I ate them up there. I found them out in the field. You need some way to ID where's my trap at, because they will disappear. Things are attracted to freebies. I mean, it's like an hors d'oeuvre. So kind of watch that one. And then it's the bombs. Don't try to gas them. Just don't even use that. Yep.
We got a pocket gopher. I understand we're new to the area and have guru.
Yeah.
And the way it was described as the pocket gopher covers its hole.
Okay.
And so you just get the mound, but that's his hole also.
It's an exit tunnel, typically. Where the mound is, that is typically an exit tunnel. So what's your question in that regard?
Well, I was following his mounds, and then first in the morning, the latest fresh metric, iron bar, it went around like that, and it stopped. Did that mean I got him?
Okay, so you had a mound. You can see where the tunnel network is. He's working it, I'm eating roots, I'm looking at worms, I'm finding stuff. Then all of a sudden, you took a digging bar, you're the man. Sort of like whacking at it like a Marine would. Whoa, go after him, and then your question is, did you kill him? No. The odds are so obscure. Every time I poke this around, I do want to hit him in the head with it, but I've never once done it. So, you may have. You could have a freakish accident happen.
This series of mounds was like 20 feet long.
My guess is he's going, oh, the gig is up. I'm going to move over here. Again, I've dug up. This is obsessive compulsive behavior. They have medication. I am on it right now. Don't worry. I dug up an entire gopher mound network, the entire thing. It was in the field, in the pasture. He was down about this far. I dug it up going, I'm going to figure this out. And so that's how I know they have 2, 3, 4 nests. I know this. They don't work the entire network all at once. I think they let the roots and the worms gather over here. And so they go over here and eat these for a while. So they migrate around in their network. I'm thinking they just moved the network. I'm hoping that you killed them with a digging bar to the head, but I have a feeling they just moved and they saw there was disturbed soil going, what the heck? I'm going over here. I think, just keep an eye on it. Just watch it. Right now I am finding they are highly active. Where I've had no gophers for 6 months or more, I'm all of a sudden, just in the last couple of weeks, seeing gophers show up. You just put it on your radar to watch for it. And then once the ground starts to get cold and freeze, you'll stop seeing this migration and moving pattern. They will actually at night come out of the ground and run to a new place and then start burrowing in. And so that's kind of how they move around. They don't move from place to place underground. Once they have a network, they stay within the network. But when mom kicks out the pups, the youngsters, she kicks them out of the ground and they got to go somewhere else. So literally, they'll be in an old railroad track. I've got a piece of the old railroad right in the back. Gophers love it back there. If I let them get too bad, they'll go up the sidewalk. It's 500 foot of sidewalk. And then they'll come into the front landscape up here. So I know they'll move. They'll travel a long way. They'll travel down a highway to get to a new space if they're desperate enough. So just keep an eye on it.
I'll tell you what not to do. When we lived there by Salia, which is all farm country.
Okay.
And we had a farmer there who had acres and acres of orange trees. And they were just destroying
His oranges.
the oranges. And so one day out of he tried everything. And one day out of desperation, he put one stick of TNT.
Oh, no. He filled the tunnels first with propane.
Oh, nice. Brilliant farmer's creativity.
The house and everything on the whole property all went, oh. His wife was really good.
So now that is a rancher's technique. Fill the holes up with propane to try to asphyxiate them. I've tried that one because a rancher in Skull Valley told me this. I didn't kill him, but I didn't put the TNT into the network. That's like brave. Oh my gosh.
His wife was pretty upset.
The other one is chewing gum. All these wives' tales, they don't work. I've tried them. There'd be nothing easier than putting a stick of juicy fruit gum in there and it's supposed to get in their systems and kill them. It doesn't do that. I've tried it. It doesn't do that. If you're going to take the energy and time, poison the doggone thing so it gets sick and goes to bed and dies. You need to get above this. So, okay, gophers, pack rats. Okay, so I've got a trap line basically in my backyard. So the front yard I have bait stations where mice and rats are free to to lunch and just have at it. But I don't have dogs out there, and I'm worried about a dead thing. Some of these poisons are very poisonous. I don't want poisons where my dogs or grandkids are. So where they're at, I keep it organic, and there's nothing more organic than a trap. Out in the front yard, we've got a fairly large acre, half acre or so. In the front yard, I use bait stations. And I just put the bait in there. You can put this bait, it doesn't matter what kind of bait. I kind of like this bait. But they also make bait chunks, daikon, or the mouse track, daikon, did I get that right? Decon. Done those. It doesn't matter. In the backyard, I use this trap. This is the greatest trap ever. I'm going to open it up just because I'm going to take this one home. I wore one out. Can you believe it or not? I've actually worn my rat trap out. I like this one because it's easy to set, but mainly because I can bait it. I can put the bait peanut butter or peanuts or walnuts. I'll put some sort of nut in there. I can bait it, put the trap back on it, and then go set the trap without me getting my finger. Sometimes these things will bite your finger, and it's doesn't break the skin typically, but it's painful. So this trap, brilliant design. Why they still have the old wire trap things, which are a nightmare. I mean, if you make a mistake at all, it zaps you. This one doesn't, and it's sensitive enough that I get mice or voles, and I get pack rats, both. One thing I can tell you is, do wire it down. So I put a piece of wire through this hole, and I'll strap it onto a piece of rebar, a 2x4 or something. 2 reasons. One, if it's out in the field, it will disappear. You want to be able to spot it from a distance if you're on larger properties. For me, I found if you get some of these pack rats are so large, this thing won't even kill them. The big males, they are humongous. So it snaps them on the head. They're so big, they're like a cat. They don't die instantly. And so they tend to walk off with it. Or if they get just their leg, they tend to walk. Just strap it down so you can spot it. And don't use thread or wire. You want to use wire because pack rats travel in groups. Voles, they travel in groups. They're family oriented. Mom takes out the kids and we're going to go destroy your gardens tonight. It's going to be fun. Come with me. And so she will catch her and other rats will try to free them from that. So they nibble through stuff. They're nibblers. I've got a trap that's literally got bite marks all over it because I killed someone and they're trying to free them from it. So just be aware of how they operate. They all die because typically they die right away, but not always. So I always use a piece of wire. Just School of Hard Knocks. You don't find this on Google. This is just School of Hard Knocks I've found over the years works in my gardens. I'm trying to share this. My name's Ken. I'm your friend, and I want you to be more successful. And I don't like rats. I have 3 of these. I have one by the hot tub. I have one by the grill, because I love my built-in grill. And I have one underneath the deck where I have a cabinet where I store all the patio furniture, because they love the patio furniture. So I just have them. And last week I caught 1 rat, 3 mice. Okay, every week, it's like, you'd think eventually you have a halo where there weren't any more. They're like unrelenting, but I think right now they're more mobile. They're looking for a place to spend the winter. And so I'm keeping up with these, okay? So there's a question here. So I like this particular trap because it's easier to use. Anyway, a trap's a trap though, okay? Lastly, 2 other things and then we'll cover flowers. They make, I should have covered this one with the gopher section, but if you're in heavy gopher area, they make these cages where you can plant your plant inside. This is stainless steel. They can't chew through it. It doesn't rust. It always stays there. But you put your fruit tree, or I think this is up to a 15-gallon size. You plant in the ground in this, and the roots can go through it. And the gophers can eat the roots until they hit this, but they can't level the tree. Literally, trees will fall over. They'll eat so many roots. There's no roots left. It just falls over in the wind. I've seen that way more than once. I've had personally an apple tree where I could take my arm and go from this side, come out the other side. Gophers had eaten the roots. This tree was this big around. Literally, I've had that happen. So this,
my rose garden, and
yeah.
literally 30 roses, in Visalia, and I went out one day, and I noticed they didn't look very good, and I went over and touched them, and literally
Yeah.
28 of
Yeah.
the 30 just came out my hand. They were flipped at the ground.
Yeah, so she had a rose garden with a garden of roses, I mean like 30 of them. And the gophers got in there, and it's so easy to think that it's okay to let them go. Because, we're kind, we're gardeners, we're generous, we have big hearts, bigger than most. And so we just go, well, let's all sing Kumbaya and let them just all live and be free. No, you need to have, and I am like the Marines, I am shock and awe. I will hit them with everything they got until there is no more activity. There's a demarcation line where love and peace thrive, but as soon as you cross that line, it's nothing but death, decay, and destruction for all you and your kin. So don't come here. So, you want to feel that? Sure.
Do you put that around all roots?
You'd want to put that in at the time of planting. It's not reality to put it in afterwards.
But
Then
anything you're planting?
anything you're planting where there's heavy gopher activity. And I have different sizes down there. That just happens to be a tree size, but it's stainless steel, so they won't. So much chicken wire will rust eventually in the ground. So it gets you 5-7 years. All of a sudden, gophers are back at you. This is not going to rust. It's easier to manipulate, and it's stainless steel. It's better quality. It's kind of.
Chicken wire underneath raised beds.
Yeah, you can put chicken wire underneath raised beds, keep them out. There's tricks, okay? So, and that does work. That's it for here. One other idea that I stumbled upon years ago, I had deer and elk both coming in and stripping the bark off my trees, walnuts, apples, aspens, poplars, all that kind of stuff. There's certain trees they really, really like. There I'm going, how in the world am I going to deal with this? I don't want to fence every single tree. That's ridiculous. I took bird netting. This is just regular bird netting you use to cover fruit trees, get the birds out. I took a piece of this and I wrapped it lightly around the trunk and I staple gunned it to the trunk. And it just kind of free floated around the trunk, this light bird netting. It was enough of a deterrent, let me take that, enough of a deterrent that they stopped the activity on the tree. It's not, there's no science behind it. I'm just telling you, my name's Ken, I'm your friend. I want you to be more successful. That worked for me very, very well. But you'll find that they'll come in, and I don't think they want to get tangled up, and so they're really worried about getting tangled up and caught. Because if you get hurt at all, it is over. There's no recovery. A mountain lion's going to eat you, and that's it. So they know this. They live in this skittish, fearful state. All you need to do is any kind of barrier, and they'll kind of run off away from that. So that's a couple times around, staple gun, I ripped off, I just zipped the rest of it, and that, it disappeared. You didn't see the tree fabric, this tree netting. So it was eye appealing, and it was effective against the deer and the deer and the elk specifically for that. Okay. Some flowers, they absolutely don't like that you can plant right now. Anyone know what this is? Every yard should have a snapdragon. It's the greatest wildflower we have. And it just reseeds and comes up, and it's just it blooms in the spring, it blooms in the fall. It's mostly evergreen. It's just a great plant for here. And it looks delicious. So I want a little ranch dressing, eat some myself. But no, they just leave this particular plant absolutely alone, no interest.
What about the deer? What about the
No animal eats this. It's resistive. Now sometimes I had the javelina in my snapdragon bed. I can show you where it was. They dug up in between them looking for worms, but they didn't bother this. There's some sort of sap in there or something they just don't like. A companion plant is this one. I plant a lot of this, especially where the javelina are really thick. The deer are really thick. This is Dusty Miller. It's a plant you can plant now. We sell it as an annual. That is, it will live just 1 year. What I find is it thinks it's a perennial. It just grows and grows and grows. Gets thicker. I've got some great examples in the test garden. You see mature specimens. Gets them about this tall. Has a beautiful yellow flower in spring all over it. But it's got a great texture. I'll plant these together just because they just look good. Designer-wise, they look good together. You're planting this mainly for the foliage. Here's some flowers. You're planting this all for the flowers. So you can put them together. Thank you, Ken. This one is one of my new favorite plants. We use a lot of this in our container gardens. Use a lot of it are just out there in the beds. I use it as an underplanting of the trees. It's so tough. It's a perennial, come back every year. It's so tough that I can put it right where the drip system is to a tree, and I'll plant it right there, and it can take the same water cycle that a tree can, once a week or whatever, and it's great. So very drought hardy, mostly evergreen. We go sub-zero, I find it can be a true perennial, die back to the ground, but most years keeps the foliage. It's called, the common name is called coral bells, because it put a little flower that kind of hooks over, coral bell flowers, but mainly you're planting it for this foliage. Great foliage, so great plant. This would look good. Shoot. Just put these three things together, you have a container garden, just like that. All through winter. Just looks good, but animals don't eat this. Javelina, don't bother it. So I've got, it's in the test garden. I can prove it to you because they're really active over there. Herbs. All of your herbs. You would think animals will like herbs, but because of the fragrance and the scent, they don't bother them. So sage, oregano, thyme, this lavender. They don't eat lavender, and I've had it right out there with javelina milling around. They won't bother it. In a big pot, it's like a trough going, eat me. They didn't eat it. So lavender won't eat. Rosemary. I think every yard should have a rosemary. Just does so well here. If you get the right variety, you need to have there's different varieties. You need the hardiest varieties, but rosemary does really well. And they don't eat it at all. And they're culinary, and they're pretty, and they're evergreen. They have everything that you want in a plant for here. Low water, takes the wind and the sun. They're great plants for here. Deer, javelina, rabbits, don't bother them. I brought this one. This is ivy. I brought it just because it's variegated. Ivy grows really well in the shade. It can take a lot of sun. It grows best where there's some protection. In those dark areas, this variegated, light-colored ivies are bright pop, where it's evergreen that looks good. Your darker evergreens, your traditional English ivy, is so dark you can hardly see it. It almost makes a dark area darker. But your very nice variegated ivies, they'll grow up. I've got these growing in a structure, big globes or pyramid-looking things, and it just takes on that form. I keep it trimmed. Birds nest inside there. It's a great little plant. Animals don't eat this. In fact, I find this grows best in a container because it's easy to contain. Because it's in a container, obviously. Just in the ground, letting it go. It grows up the house, through the walls, starts to make breakfast in the kitchen. I mean, it's really aggressive vine. It's a tough plant. But in a container, it's easy to maintain. Okay? And then sedum. Especially the low-growing sedums. I've had trouble with the tall sedums. Autumn Joy sedum, the real tall one that's going in red right now. Super tough plant. I plant the Autumn Joy in my backyard mainly for the birds, because the sparrows early spring they'll come in and use it as a food source, and I like that. I want to attract more birds. And then once their regular grasses are up, they migrate off of that and go into the regular surrounding soils. This one, the shorter ones, seem to be javelina, deer, other resistant. So this we use in rock gardens. The spread in between the boulders. This is as tall as it gets. I use it in containers. Literally this will flow over and have tendrils that go right to the ground. It's beautiful. Evergreen, super drought hardy. If you do a lot of traveling, you got an RV, you love to cruise, you're gone for segments of time, you know the house sitter's going to kill stuff. It's just part of the travel expense. Hire a house sitter. They're supposed to water. Things will die. It's part of, I just scratch my head going, there's no way to get around this. But this, they can't kill. So it just works really well. It can go for 2 weeks and still come back, and it might look stressed. Water it, comes back for you. So sedums are really great.
How do you spell that?
S-E-D-U-M, sedum. There's a whole section of them down there. There's lots of varieties. Play with them. They're burgundies, greens, that kind of stuff. Shall we take a quick walk? So these are, we own these couple properties here, and so we just decided to dress up the neighborhood and experiment. We have herds of javelina. Deer will come in, the forest is right there. So they've got free range, come in from the forest, and they just come in and they snoop around. So we had a gentleman here that had said, something's coming in and digging up the soil around my trees. I noticed the javelina do the exact same thing here. They'll root up around underneath things. What they're doing is they're looking for grubs and worms. That's their main protein source. So they're tilling up. They don't. I'm predicting that is a javelina digging up, and you've got some grubs at the base of the trees. If you put a grub killer down, you'll kill off the grubs. You kill off the food source. Your plants will be healthier, happier, but you'll also eliminate the javelina. They won't have interest because every time they dig in here, there's no reward. There's no grubs and worms. And so put down a grub killer, and I think you'll have less. You won't have the javelina coming to rototilling. So that would be the advice I can give to you. The other one would be grubs. If you see a little cone-shaped hole about this big, it's about silver dollar, goes down about that deep, and there's lots of them throughout the yard. There's only one thing that does that. That's skunks. Skunks come in, they roam around, they've got a nose that can smell where the grub is. They take their paws and they dig down, find it, eat it, move to the next one. So they're digging, every place you saw a hole, there was a grub. Way to eliminate skunks, put down a grub killer, get rid of the grubs, there's no reward, they'll keep moving on, so they'll be gone. That's how you get rid of skunks. You don't deal with the actual physical creature, you're dealing with their food source, so they'll go to the neighbors and eat their grubs, not come to your yard and bother your yard. So they love lawns. That seems to be where a lot of grubs are, but grubs also they eat roots, so they're actively where plants are. Okay. Here a couple things. Probably the most famous. This was in all its glory a month ago. This is a Salvia greggii, or autumn sage. Every yard should have one. This is fully mature. It's been there for a lot of years. It's not watered or cared for. We fertilize it every once in a while, but it has these red flowers, and hummingbirds are all over this thing. So I will leave this intact all winter, and then next, probably mid to late March, I'll shape it, cut it back, but I want to leave that structure, that plant up to protect the roots through winter. In case we get a harsh winter, I can ensure the roots are survive. We're on this north slope, so it's a little colder, snow builds up right here, and just buries this garden. And so if I keep that structure of the plants up, it protects, insulates the sun. Okay.
But in the spring, you would cut it back a little bit?
I'd give it a haircut. I don't cut
Because
it back to the roots.
I've got a couple of them that have been there 10 years, and they've just
Shape it.
taken over.
Yeah, just shape it. That's all you do. So cut it back for you. Cut it back to like this, but don't do it till March.
Okay.
That way we're past our cold. It's getting really nice in March. We can still get snow, but it's pretty nice out. So do it then. Your grasses. Grasses are surprisingly hardy for deer, javelina, that kind of stuff. So miscanthus, gold bar, a lot of your shorter grasses. I didn't want to introduce pampas grass here, that monster, because it would take over the entire yard. I don't want that. I want delicate, interesting, unusual grasses. Grasses add motion. So very good luck with a lot of the native grasses, especially deer grass, miscanthus, bear grass, all natives. Do really, really well here, naturalized, and animals don't bother them. Okay, great choice. Anyone know what this is? Santolina, or what's a common name for that? Santolina it's an herb. It's evergreen or ever blue, whatever color that is. It looks like that all the time. Gets a yellow flower in spring all over it. Tough. In fact, many of the herbs I'll use as repellents, especially my containers. I'll plant a rosemary to hide the scent of the pansies. They love pansies. So, and that seems to work. It masks the fragrance. So you can use herbs in that regard. This one just looks prehistoric. This is gopher plant, or gopher spurge. Gopher plant, now the rumor is plant one of these keeps gophers out of a garden. Does not work. Okay, it might keep a gopher from right there, but that's it. You can never plant enough. I plant this mainly because it's an evergreen perennial. This is fully mature. It's a yellow flower in spring, and after it's rooted and established, can go by itself. Very low care. Okay, so it's a great one. This is ivy, English ivy. So you can tell it's just going to ground cover and fill up this. This is crepe myrtle, It's been in bloom for all summer, 3-4 months. Now you're seeing this beautiful orange fall color. So like lilacs are in the same league. They don't bother lilacs. Forsythias, they don't bother that. There's certain flowering plants that the animals they just don't care for. So crepe myrtle's one of those.
Is that, I've never seen one I've only seen them as trees.
So the tree form, because we're cold here, doesn't seem to perform well. The shrubs, crepe myrtle shrubs, are better choices. The reason being, if we get about every 10 years, we go sub-zero, and that'll nip that tree right back to the ground. It will come back naturally as a bush. The tree will just die. So if you're going to plant the crepe myrtle, just take it from me, plant the shrub, don't plant the tree. So
What's the one behind the gopher?
this is rock rose, and it's a native. It puts on a pink flower about like that all spring. So from March through May, it's got this beautiful paper mache flower, and it's got this texture and color that animals just don't like it. This is a broom. We do a lot of this is southwestern plant, so Spanish broom, Scotch broom. Anytime you see the word broom, you know it's going to be a good plant. Super fragrant flowers in spring, covered flowers all the way up it, just covered in flowers. Spirea, and we probably can't get all the plants in, but why don't we work this way? I'll show you some shade plants, because some of you are going to have some shade sections.
Is this hot sun?
This is kind of sun. These are more sunny.
Okay.
Morning through, yep. This is hard shade right here. So I was playing with the shade areas. Rhododendron is probably the most famous of all the shade plants. Come on, walk right up this way, you all. Just use this, that way we got people in the back that can see. And you can walk in the gardens too, it's fine. It's made to be enjoyed. So rhododendron, you can see the flowers starting to form. And again, it looks delicious. It's evergreen, it's pretty, covered in flowers in spring. But animals don't eat rhododendrons. Azaleas the same way, they don't eat those. This, I thought they would eat. Thought for sure. And I'm surprised at how much shade this will take. You can see the flowers right here. That's going to be the flower bud. Usually end of February, 1st of March, Forsythia will start to bloom. It kind of announces the start of spring. But Forsythia has been right here. I know I've had javelina actively roaming around. They've left this one alone. Done very, very well.
But it's a good shape plant.
You know, it's a better sun plant, but I'm surprised how much shade it's taking. We generally put it out in full sun, and surround it by rock, and then kick dirt at it and think bad thoughts, and it still grows and blooms. It's a tough plant for you. Same with lilac, it's a companion plant. Every yard needs one of these. It's done blooming, of course. Butterfly bush, the secret butterfly bush. This we used a dwarf variety because it's right on a pathway, and still it's getting big. So there's some really large ones, your dark nights, and some they get bigger than a house. So plant the right butterfly bush for the right space so it fits your area. This I will again keep intact, let it insulate the main core of the trunk of the plant, but in March I'll just really cut on it hard and keep it in control that way. So you can't cut on a butterfly bush enough. As long as you're waiting later, get past the harshest of winter, it'll take that easily. Here you've got your heucheras, or those coral bells. So here I planted some lime green. Again, it's dark. How do I lighten up this garden and have some bright spots? So the lighter greens, and this the copper colored one we showed off the class there, just sprinkled throughout. Good undercover kind of plant.
So they like what, dappled sun?
They'll take sun to shade. I've got them in full sun in containers on a patio. I didn't think it would grow there, but I get bored with gardening. I always want a gardener truly tests. If you're not killing things, you're not a true gardener. Let's see where the limits are. So I'm kind of that. I like to see where it'll go. Full sun in a pot all the way to this is hard shade. I mean, this is as much sun as it ever gets, and it's only because it's late. During the growing season, there's no sun. This is honeysuckle. If you like ground covers and vines, honeysuckle is your go-to plant. Evergreen, animals don't eat it, has that fragrant flower to it. One that you may not recognize because it's out of bloom right now, but trumpet vine. It's had a huge red and orange flower on it. Hummingbirds love it. Trumpet vine, they don't eat. And then my favorite of all the vines, this is Akebia, 5-leaf Akebia. It's an evergreen vine, very aggressive, grows like crazy, a slight, small flower with a very heavy fragrance. But Akebia, I've had it right out there in ranch land. We're surrounded by every kind of animal you could think of. They never bothered that plant.
Which one?
Okay. Lastly, we'll go over here. This is that Dusty Miller, fully mature specimen. Every once in a while I'll go through and I'll just break off these spent flowers, and then it keeps blooming. It's just real pretty. It's right here where animals don't eat it. Dogwood, they don't eat dogwoods. There's a red twig and a yellow twig. They're going into color right now, and then the red twig and yellow twig dogwoods, they're actually prettier without their foliage because the stems are so beautiful. Gosh, I guess I should go over this one. This is Akuba. It's an evergreen. For you folks from Southern California, you'll love this. Hawaii. It looks tropical. It's not though. I've had this go through 2 sub-zero winters. Still looks as good. Gets about this tall, about that big around. Mine's maybe 5-7 years old. Evergreen, hard shade though. It needs shade. So Akuba is a great plant. With that, any other questions? There you go.
Butterfly bush, does that do well in sun and shade?
It will do better in sun. You get more flowers. What I find that area is kind of dappled. It's pretty hard shade. What I found was it did surprisingly well. The flowers were a little smaller though, but they stayed on the plant longer. They didn't dry out as quickly.
Okay.
So it bloomed longer, but the flowers are small. That's something I'm finding is interesting with butterfly. Will all butterfly bush do that? Will the big ones like shade? I think not. I think it'll grow up and lean over. I'm seeing that a little bit with this. It's starting to reach for the sun. I think it'll do better in full sun. Butterfly bush in full sun are good plants. Now you notice the fence here. This is to keep the dogs in, so I can bring them over here and have them rest, get them off the, public's eye. Employees can come over and they can grill and do stuff. But I put the fruit trees back there because I knew fruit trees are going to be doomed. They're going to be dinner. So you got pears, apples, cherries, plums, and some other stuff. So, okay. With that, I'll leave you.